Hello and welcome to another edition of Storytelling on Orchard Street. I'm Pete Salamita, I'm your host, and we're in the podcast studios of P&T Knitwear Bookstore on Orchard Street, 180 to be exact. My guest today is Jeffrey Cyphers Wright. Jeffrey is a new romantic poet and author of 20 books. He received an MFA in poetry after studying with Allen Ginsberg. He publishes Live magazine. Wright has received a Kathy Acker Award and a James Tate Prize. His work was included in the Best American Poetry Anthology for 2023. Jeffrey, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Pete.
I got to say, this is funny. So I do this. I also do a very swell variety show. I got the t-shirt.
Yeah.
And so I'm often asked to have to get people's bios. And I can't tell you how many times I get bios and I have to edit them. Like some people will give me like a page-long bio. This guy did something never ever seen before. He gave me the first 2 sentences. And I said, oh, come on, man, give me a little more than that. And then you gave me 2 more sentences for a total of 4. But the funny thing is, it's not like you haven't been busy in the arts. Listen to this. So I listen on YouTube. Jeffrey has a lot of stuff on YouTube, and there's a documentary. I forgot the name of it, but it's like a 20-minute long.
Cuckoo o'clock. It's 26 minutes.
Yeah, no, it's 29, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway, it's great. I watched the whole thing. I watched some other things he got up there, and this guy has done so much. It's insane. And why don't you talk? We're going to talk about it. Listen to this. This is what you've done, or as an artist. Person in media and the arts, publisher, an artist, a musician, an editor, an activist, a champion for community gardens in the Lower East Side, a puppeteer, a designer, an events person, impresario, and you currently also do Bravitas, besides all the books and magazines and everything you do.
Yeah.
I was blown away. Like, look, well, there's a little background on how we know each other. In my personal life, my work life.
Yeah.
This doesn't pay money. I work for Hungry Ghost Coffee Shop, and there's a location on Carroll Street where I work. Is it okay that I gave up that part of it?
Yeah.
People will now know you go to the. Anyway, so Jeff came in one time and. I don't remember what was playing. It was some music from the 60s that was playing, and you made a comment about it. And I think you might have made a comment on a couple of pieces that were on my playlist. And I said, well, back in the day, I was a musician and a drummer and, DJ, and I did a bunch of stuff like that. And I said, but now I'm doing poetry. And I found out you also are a poet. But, people can say, oh, yeah, I do poetry too. And it could mean once in a while you go to an open mic or something like that. And through talking to you, I could see that it's more than that. It's a lifelong commitment. And at one point you gave me Live Mag, which you mentioned in your bio. You got a same copy or?
Different copy for
okay,
you today, Pete.
Cool. It's a great mag. So how long you been doing this?
Well, I did cover magazine originally. My friends and all, we started this magazine, kind of fell into my lap. Cover arts, and the manager for the Ritz at the time was helping me, and all the poets were writing articles, and the galleries and the record companies were kind of fueling it, paying for it. So that was around 86 to 2000, and then Prince in my blood. I started it when I got in New York. I started doing. Ted Berrigan told us all to start a magazine.
Right.
But I started postcard series and did 80 of those. Printed Allen Ginsberg and everybody on the scene, and a lot of other people too. And so then around 2007, Bob Holman said, "Would you like to have the weekend over at a spot over there at the Bowery Poetry Club?" Which I'm wearing.
Got the shirt.
Now.
It's a great shirt too.
And I said, sure. What I'll do is I'll have a live event where people are published. If they get on the stage,
right.
I'll call it Live, man.
Yeah, I saw this in the video.
Yeah, but I kept the title. Yeah, the video, I wanted to thank Luigi Cazzaniga, and that is up. You can see that. Go to my website and see that. Commissioned by the New York Public Library.
So we're going to go back to all of this. I like to always get a little background on people, find out how they became the artist, the writer, the poet, the musician that they are. So you live in you currently, or you have lived in the Lower East Side,
I
or
was
East
so
Village for a long
lucky,
time?
Pete. I got to the New York and this
From where?
from
West
West
Virginia. That's
Virginia.
right. I
And this
have
guy,
that on here.
and this guy down there had a pad up here on East 11th, and I crashed on his floor or couch, whatever, for a little while, and he got me a little place. So
Right.
I landed in East Village.
So
and
you
I
were- so
love
you
it.
you
I
grew
never
up in
left.
coal country, right?
I grew up in a little college town. It was like
college town.
Mayberry. It was idyllic.
Right.
It was so sweet.
Right. Okay.
But then I moved around all over. So by the time I got here, I
As
think
as an adult or family?
both.
Okay. So tell me, like, what was your inspiration as a kid? Like, were you into all this stuff as a kid, or did it come later? Were your parents influential in the?
Well, yeah, my
in
parents. One was an educator, and the other had wanted to be a religious educator.
Okay.
My mom.
Right.
And my mom, she sold, excuse me, she sold encyclopedias until she got enough to buy us a set.
Okay.
With the kids.
Encyclopedias.
section.
Kids 20, 30 years old, maybe even don't know
Oh,
what
yeah,
that
what
is.
is that?
That was
There
everything,
was a lot
right?
of books in the house. A
Right.
lot of literature was like encouraged.
Did either of them do anything in the arts, right? Or, I mean, educator,
My
I
dad
guess. But,
played around with all that stuff. My mom was actually could play a lot of music. My dad did some painting. He played trumpet some. My dad could recite Xanadu and The Raven.
okay.
And those are sort of my first.
Wow.
And my grandmother loved sort of
Like
vernacular
from
poetry.
from
Yeah,
memory?
Yeah.
Holy, my hat's off to people who could do that.
Allen Ginsberg could do that. Lita Hornick, they could recite a lot.
Right. But I see you in the video. It looks like you can recite poetry without. I still use paper. I haven't
Oh, I
graduated.
Too.
Okay.
I could write down the poem, but there would be like every stanza. I'd be like.
Right. So how old were you when you landed in New York City?
So I was 24, just a few days. I got here in '76, so like started writing poems in high school. 15. E. Cummings was
Okay.
a big shaker looser for me.
Right.
Got here
College?
before long. I went to West Virginia. Started in Northern Arizona University. By the time I got to West Virginia, I was getting serious about poetry.
Okay. And were you studying literature in college?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay.
I studied a lot of stuff like a lot of people, but it was sort of spiritually aligned. Like anthropology, sociology, psychology, literature.
Right. Okay.
And then
And you graduated with
Jane Ann
liberal
Phillips?
arts, or
Jane Ann Phillips was down there in West Virginia, and she was encouraging me a lot, and we were sharing everything. And there was a couple of other core people. My cousin was down there,
okay.
and then when I got here, before long, I fell in over at St. Mark's, and they had open readings. They had free workshops. Ted Berrigan became like my mentor pretty fast, and so.
But you said you traveled around a little bit. Did you, from West Virginia to New York, had you stopped at any cities?
I lived in London
Oh,
from
okay.
6th grade.
All right. So New York wasn't
Ann Arbor.
because if you went from West Virginia to New York, it would have been a little bit of a start.
But except for London, which was the suburbs, they were always kind of small towns. I lived in like Fairfax, Flagstaff, Ann Arbor.
Right. So New York must have been something when you got here.
When I came over that Pulaski Bridge, Pete, I was like.
Right.
But luckily, I did have like a Virgil beside me to get me into the East Village because that's where I belong.
Right. Right.
It's a great
And you've
break.
been there ever since.
And I said to myself, I've always said to myself, it doesn't really matter what happens to me in terms of like the audience or anything. What really counts is I got to meet the people I want, that I respected and wanted to know.
Judging from your video, you met a lot of pretty cool artistic people. How'd you meet Ginsberg?
Well, I was like living next door to Bob Rosenthal and his wife Shelley Kraut, and they had kids, and I had kids suddenly, and Bob was Allen's secretary, and he lived around the corner, and so when I would see him, I would follow him and walk him and carry his books, and then I studied with him also over at Brooklyn College to get my MFA.
Right.
And Bob was wonderful, and he would had parties sometimes, and Allen would come, and so I got him to write a intro for one of my books.
Ah.
He was terrific. He was, and then that whole circle was huge. I mean, Herbert Huncke was still around, And then opportunities would show up, like at the Knitting Factory, and my friend Ilka Scobie and I started the first reading series there.
Right.
We had like Herbert Huncke and John Giorno and Leroy Mary Baraka Jones.
It sounds like it was a very fertile time here. Do you think that's changed?
Yeah.
Like, let's say, you know, the new Bob Dylan, the Bob Dylan movie shows him landing in the West Village and the folk scene. And it was a really big folk scene. And that changed music.
It changed
right?
the world, yeah.
So was that a similar thing, you think, for what you know, with the poetry and the other things for you? Like, was it a...
What a curveball.
Yeah.
What a curveball. Well,
like there was an
it's
energy. I mean, it looks
different.
like... By the way, it looks from, again, I'm just watching a video of your artistic life, but it looks like you always had a lot of energy, and you put yourself out there in different ways. Probably challenged yourself to do things and get yourself out there in places. Is it that's why the scene was like that, because you made the scene for yourself?
Well, I was lucky that after I'd landed here and gotten going and everything, that the East Village really exploded internationally with the punk thing, especially,
Right,
and
sure.
then the galleries on top of that.
Right.
And there was already a strong poetry presence there with Patti Smith and
Yeah.
Allen Ginsberg, and it was a really special time.
It just seems like it was.
But a lot of those people, because there was so much energy, not everybody burnt out, and a lot of them have had I count myself here, fortunate enough to have a long time to season and mature a style that just keeps going. Like I was at the Bowery Poetry Club last night listening to Andre Codescu and some other people.
Right.
And I met Andre in '76, and I was so lucky. I started meeting people immediately. And it was so Kathy Acker I got to meet right away, because people were, especially if you were coming into it through the poetry side, they were fairly friendly,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and they had their own connections to the art world and the music world. And
That's right. I've said this many times on my show. So if you watch every episode or listen to every episode, maybe you're sick of it. But I got into this pretty recently. I was in bands, so I was in the, you know, out in the city doing shows that way. What was I? I was going to make a point.
maniac, that's it.
I was going to make a point. I had a point about why I was going to say that. I feel like I missed this though. I wonder, you know.
Well, you know, the scene is different, but it's such a larger scene now. There's so many encampments and cross-fertilizations.
It seems like there's still a lot of people our age going out there and doing it.
There
Right.
are. And then there's
There must be a
lot of
younger
people too.
Yeah.
Yeah. There are.
Do you
There's
go
so many
to
scenes.
events that are more for a younger audience? Poetry events and stuff?
I try to get to the younger peoples, like the 60-year-olds.
Yeah. Wait,
No.
you're saying that you're older than in your 60s?
Eh,
You don't have to.
Yeah, wow. And yeah, you know, there's a lot of great series around. There's always stuff coming up. There's Zoom now. I'm working
Right.
with Mark Vincent on this. We do a couple of Zooms a month from all over the country. you
Right.
know. And then there's all the internet stuff. And there's still like a lot
Do
of...
I mean, I haven't done a lot of
publications.
Zoom. I did one recently. But I get kind of buzzed by the live thing. Do you feel the
Oh,
same?
yeah, of course.
You get...
Oh, yeah.
What do you feel like?
the
I guess
live
the
things-
Zoom thing is good because it could be international
You
easily.
can stay home and turn it off the
Yeah,
screen and,
right.
you know, dust your
You don't even
house
have to
and
have
take a
pants
sip.
on.
Well, you have to be careful when you turn it back on. Yeah, but it's another good way, and that way you can reach people from out of town. Because one thing about like I had a couple of books come out with the Coffee House before it was called that with toothpaste, and the guy said, you have to get more famous. It's just in a 10-block area.
Right.
So,
True.
you know,
Yeah.
if you live in New York, and frankly, who wants to leave New York? I mean, I could go on a book tour or something if I set one up, but
Right.
I probably should. But
Have you done that? I guess you must have done
a
that.
little dab.
Right.
Yeah.
You know what? We'll talk more, but I definitely have to get you to read something because believe it or not, we're a quarter of the way in already. So I had a feeling after I saw all this, and I know you like to express yourself, that I was afraid we were going to talk too much.
We're talking.
It would be very easy to have things to talk about.
Well, let me read Metaphoria. My happy dream.
What's this from, by the way?
Metaphoria is in a manuscript that hasn't been published yet.
Okay.
It's called Long Play.
Right. Nice.
DJ.
Like that. Right. Yeah.
DJP.
Yeah. 33 and a third.
Metaphoria. My happy dream, ashes left on the pillow in dawn's mylar pall, smoke on a mirror, a broken word, a ventriloquist venting. We are made also of our shortcomings. The light coders clutch cappuccinos, checking for alerts from Icarus's sister. Your tentacles tantalize my testicles. My shoelace tangles with a curly hair, transfixed, pouring through the jester's journal. Did I already check the mail? Amy says they're called fairy fans. Even the leaves are falling in love. We have no other choice. In the country of handstands, our feet take root in the sky.
All right.
Sonnet.
Yeah. Awesome. So one thing I got out of your that film, the documentary, is that at some point early on, you or the people that you were in a circle with decided to dub your movement New Romantic.
Yeah, so there was a cadre of young guns over at St. Mark's, and there were the Beatniks over here, the New York School over here.
Mm-hmm.
We were a sort of confluence of the two of them.
Okay.
And the language school was popping up over here, and slam poetry and
Right.
spoken word, and all.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, guys, we need a tag.
Right.
We can't go as third generation New York School or St. Mark's poets
Right.
necessarily.
Yeah.
How about New Romantics? So, there were a cadre of us. We had a manifesto, and there were other movements around in fashion and
This is
classical
the
music.
80s?
Yeah, late 80s.
Yeah. Okay. Mm-hmm.
Middle 80s, yeah.
Right. And has this been like something that you've kept going?
Absolutely.
Okay. Right.
Yeah, Sparrow said I invented it in Rain Taxi. He mentioned that.
Ah.
And,
Okay.
when I think
He was on this program. He's something
Sparrow's
else. I mean,
great.
there's nobody like him. I like that guy.
Sui generis.
Yeah. Yep.
And the original Romantics, in some ways, were responding to the ruins around them. Like you think of David Caspar Friedrich painting those ruins.
Mm-hmm.
And our generation, I think, was kind of one of the first to start to see the decline of empire. Up until then, it had been rah, 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 pretty much. And now, it's grim in a lot of ways.
Right.
So the New Romantics, I felt, were kind of responding to that. And also for me personally, there were poets like John Wieners, extremely lyric and romantic. And they were the ones that always spoke to me the loudest.
Okay.
Like of Neruda's poems, it's the captain's verses, which are the love poems, which killed me the most, And in grad school out of Brooklyn, I was introduced to Sir Thomas Wyatt, who introduced the sonnet and introduced in a lot of ways the concept of a persona and a muse as a lover. And so those were also great influences.
Right. So the bulk of you say you have 20 books, and the stuff you've done otherwise in print is under that title, the New Romantic title.
I already had a few books out by the time that started,
okay.
but
Right.
I was working towards it.
I was just wondering about this since you've been doing this for so long, and the 20 books come like when was the first book published of the 20?
So I was working I tried to get a job at New Directions, and I got a job next door at Theater Arts Books.
Okay.
And so
What's New Directions? I don't.
New Directions Publishers.
Oh, okay. Okay.
And so I went in and borrowed their Xerox machine, and I Xeroxed 5 little books with 5 poems in it, and I made a cover, and I stenciled Trans Lust, and I called it 5 Finger Press, because I said,
That's
something
great.
about
Good title.
grateful to New Directions.
Right.
Yeah. Actually, New Directions sent me a nice note about Triple Crown that they really liked it, but they just couldn't publish it. But
Right.
it was really sweet.
Yeah. when you look back, now this goes back a long time.
Yeah.
How do you see your writing from then? When you read your writing from the early days? What do you think about it?
This is what I think, Pete. I think like since I didn't get to New York till I was 24, barely, but
Right.
24, I had a BA. I worked with some other poets, not a lot, but
Right.
I had been informed by other things mostly than the Beats or the New York School. And so I had a sort of a groundedness in some like Mayakovsky and Lorca, a lot of foreign poets, some of the more modern leaning like James Wright, American poets who were grounded but still had other elements in their poems. So I felt like once I got here with that stuff,
Right.
that the New York School conversationality of it and the immediacy of the performance aspect of the beat stuff, it kind of melded into me. And then when you threw in these, like Wyatt, these old English poets, I just love that high diction of their language, and I like to throw it in and spin it around with the modern stuff.
Okay. So your early stuff was coming from a place of pretty fully formed poet. So, it doesn't look, when you look back at it, it doesn't look like, oh, that's immature. It's like, I was just
There's some
getting
good stuff
started.
in there. There's some good stuff in there. It had great models. But, part of it was having to write a shitload of bad or mediocre. I wouldn't even say bad, but, And my girlfriend, she came up with this formula that's very good advice for any poet, is to read 20 poems of somebody else's for every one you write.
Wow.
And, that's pretty good because these new eddies of when you read people, you don't know how they'll influence you.
Right.
And it may be very slant,
Uh-huh.
but you need that. You really need that. And you need it to keep improvising and keep moving on. You
Right.
need a lot of other people's ideas.
Uh-huh.
They say, the bad poet borrows, the good poet steals. Ted Berrigan was good at that.
Right.
Ted told me another thing, Pete. He said, the poem doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to work. And that is such a license for a
Right.
poet.
Work in what way?
In some way.
Right.
It's like if you look at a Ouija photo, you're looking at it, and suddenly you've looked at all of it, and then the very last thing you see is one guy's face peeking out from between another guy's legs.
Right.
And you go, aha, there's that
Right.
aha moment.
Sure.
Then you know it works.
Right.
I don't know.
Right. It's got to do something. It's got to either evoke an emotion or tell a story or
Have a
say something new.
twist.
Yeah.
A twist.
So I was just curious how you made your living during these years, because you were doing all this artistic stuff. Was it paying bills, or did you have like a 9-to-5 job?
Well, I was a hustler. When I was in college, I was about to graduate in West Virginia English, and there was an ad in the paper. The school paper said that wanted publisher willing to travel. Wow, yeah, man.
Oh.
So I went in, and they said, yeah, you're going to be selling dictionaries door to door.
Oh, no.
And I did it. And the first summer, I was like, in South Carolina. It was like,
Wow.
it was quite an adventure. Man,
Right.
I'll tell you, talk about humanity and seeing into America's soul.
Right.
Then I did it again the next year in Missouri.
Wow.
That year I made a
This is
lot
door
of
to
money.
door you're talking about.
Door to door, yeah.
Oh
and it
my
was a
God.
nice program.
Right.
And that
Were
year
you
I
good
made a
at it?
bunch of dough.
Did you
The
sell a lot of
second year I
dictionaries?
got going. And the third year I tied the second year.
Did you like it? Because I don't know if I could do that.
No,
the
no, it
door-to-door
took a
thing.
lot
I've
of-
done sales, but not quite like that.
Well, this was, like I said, a nice program. They had, if you learned what they said and you were, charming, because these people sitting around basically, you put on a show.
Right.
And they tell you how to do it, and they gave you a ratio.
No, nobody would open their door anymore, right? I
Yeah,
don't
know
open
how
my
they
door.
do it now. I'd be afraid. I mean, I did have a gun pulled on me.
Did you?
Oh yeah.
Wow.
So, but anyway, it was like, so I had this idea that I will do any kind of job as long as it has to do with language.
Okay,
So I came
fair
to
enough.
New York. I'm typing stuff. Just had the
Right.
dictionaries. I'm
Right.
here. I'm typing. It's kind of a little. I did some teaching here and there. All
I was
around
going
for a
to. I was
decade
wondering
or
about
so.
the teaching thing, because
lot of
it seems like
teaching.
you got so much stuff in your brain about
I
poetry,
love
and
teaching.
it's
I love teaching.
Yeah.
But then when I started cover, I was teaching out at Brooklyn College, and it was just kind of too much, and they let me go after a while, and that magazine became real full time, and it kept going for about 15 years, and it paid the bills.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, barely.
Uh-huh.
But it did.
Okay.
Everybody, a few people got paid,
Right.
like the designer. And so I did a lot of teaching. And then finally, after a couple of years after I did cover, by 2000, I went back into the public school. And that was great, really, because at the time it was bleak. And they really needed teachers desperately. And
Right.
they threw me into special ed pretty much right away.
Okay. Where?
That was perfect. Right around here, Seward Park.
Okay. Right.
And I really got along with the kids because, it was fun. It was just like that was the whole idea. We're going to have fun because learning is fun if you do it the right way.
Yeah, well, yeah, sure.
So we pretty much had a lot of fun.
You have the right teacher, it can really inspire you, even on a subject you might not think you like that much.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
But I did make some money from, the magazines, the postcards even that I mentioned at first. They managed to pay for themselves. I got a grant or two to do a little few things. I did poetry workshops. Poets and writers gave us some money to do that, like the series at the Knitting Factory. So we were always doing stuff, always churning it.
And sometimes money came with it.
Yeah.
Which is hard in the arts. Why don't you read something else?
Okay, Pete. Let me see here. I'll read something from Fuel for Love. This poem, I'm happy to say, is in the new Lonesome magazine. I like to have epigraphs a lot, not only just for myself, but also for the larger public and the poetry audience. So this one has an epigraph by Yves Bonnefoy. No more paths.
Explain an epigraph.
An epigraph is I like a quote from some other poet.
Oh, I see.
That you give you credit, and it looks real cool.
Right, yeah.
Right. Smart.
Right. And is it tied into the poem itself?
In a way.
Okay.
Let's see. Let's test that theory.
Right,
Okay, that's a good question, right? So, No More Paths for Us, Yves Bonnefoy. No More Paths for Us. The poem is called Nights and Daisies. Bring your drum, a pile of darkness, black cherries. Bring a fire you let go out. Bring your naked trust. Bring the strait you swim across. Bring the chain of storms you ride like a bandit inside. Bring a bottle. Bring a shoreline to the party. God has given up trying to finish us. We're too thirsty for heaven's well. I hear you splashing in the unknown river that runs between our legs, surrounded by a waterfall of now. This is my love letter to everything, written in rain on evening's gown.
All right. Let me see the book.
I'll tell you a funny story. So the last line, written in rain on evening's gown, is, this is my love letter to
So this
everything.
is the book that won the James Tate.
Yeah, Fuel for
Nice.
Love.
Cool.
Right here at P&T Knitwear, I kind of half stole the line about, somebody said this is my love letter, and I ran with it right here at P&T Knitwear.
Nice.
This, I just want to say,
that was the kickoff to the poem? That one line, or?
Maybe.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Because sometimes I'll get a sentence,
Yeah.
and it's, that's a good sentence, and I build a poem around the one sentence.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's from a song, a movie, somebody else says.
I was going to say, when I go to other readings or I'm just out and around, usually at readings, but I keep this journal or other journals,
Right.
So when I'm trying to construct the poem, I'll go in here and look for like key phrases or words that work, and that'll twist the poem here and there. Or if I have a bad line in the poem, I'll really start looking.
How many of those journals do you have?
Probably
all
50,
these years later.
50 maybe, about one a year maybe.
You keep them.
Oh yeah. They're for the archive down in West Virginia.
I smell
Library.
a memoir coming.
Somebody asked me, I did start one. Like I mentioned the Pulaski Bridge. That's how I started.
Right.
But I was going to say this thing here. I've been playing with AI images.
Right.
So this has.
So you did the cover?
I did. I told AI to make a. I took a line from the poem. I said, make an image of a marriage of let's see, what was it? A marriage of a mirage and a carriage.
Right.
And then I said Sean Landers style. And Sean Landers is a popular artist. He shows over at Pretzel Gallery. Pretzel.
Current?
Yeah. He's a young guy. Yeah, and this is really beautiful.
Does it look like his art at all?
Not really. No, it's funny, but it looks good,
funny.
right? And then I have...
So you're embracing the technology. An old school guy like you.
I have a new book coming out called Erato's Inbox that Barbara Rosenthal is going to publish. She published also.
I gotta say, you throw out a lot of names.
Yeah, right.
And you're talking to a guy, like I said, I'm new to this scene. I'm like, how do people? But it's good. It's
But
good
she's doing a whole book of these images
Right.
with this poem. It's about 12 pages, but with all the images from AI. And they were clumsy at first. They got better. So that'll be out soon from Xanadu. She did Party Everywhere.
I feel like you should teach a class on the scene and all the people you've met.
That's what
Like a
somebody
history
said
of
with the bio,
a history class of poetry, East Village life. No, okay.
No, I'm saying, yeah, mine. I'd love to. It's easier to talk about it. Let's play that.
Yeah. I got to ask you about the puppets.
Oh.
No?
Yeah, no, the puppets are sweet.
Where did that come? Like, were you like a kid and you did
We
loved
did a
puppets
little
when you were
bit.
a kid?
One of my brothers had the some little like famous dummy that we practiced with, you know.
By the way, listeners or viewers, Jeff does poetry, puppetry, right?
Yeah, we just did the poetry puppetry slam
Right.
at the Bowery, the
Are
first
there
one.
other people that do it? I mean, I've seen
Yeah.
obviously, puppetry is often used to do, famous works like maybe Shakespeare or other, works of literature and other things. Are there other people out there doing?
Not too many that
Yeah.
I know of, but I just saw last night, actually, Tompkins Square, I read with Nada Gordon. And she's been making and renovate, taking some old antique dolls and stuff and
Right.
making her own and stuff. She was playing with AI a lot in imagery, too. It was one of the poets who did. So she had her puppets reading the lines and all. And I did that thing over at the Bowery, and I've got to do something else, a play for the Boog Festival. And
Okay.
I thought, I'll get these puppets to talk. But the thing about the puppets is,
Is it a new thing or you always like? Is that
I
when
started
did it come
doing
about?
well, we did do it as a kid a little bit.
Okay,
And then when I started with
but
this,
not with the poetry, just playing with
yeah,
puppets.
with making up stories.
Right.
And then teaching the kids, they threw me in like, they were changing me from here to there, and then suddenly I go from high school to kindergarten and even
Right. So what are you
pre-K,
gonna do? Right.
and they give me nothing. And
Right.
I'm like, what the hell am I gonna do? I go in the basement looking for what's in the school, and I found puppets.
Wow. So
And
that's how it
then-
happened.
and then
What year was
people
this?
started giving me puppets.
And when was this?
Around 2004 or 5.
Okay.
And they kept giving me to me. I lost some. I found people kept giving me to them. I only bought a few, and now I have like 30.
Wow.
And recently, one of my friends was saying, you should make Sheriff Mandy, my son, he was saying,
Okay.
you should make Sheriff Mandy get top billing next time you perform in the poetry stuff.
Right.
Make her more of a celebrity than you. I thought that would be fun.
Right. So it's my tradition that I read one of my poems.
Oh, right.
So I picked out. Actually, I'm going to read two, but there's the one's a haiku or two haikus on a page, and the other one's a very short poem. I happen to have poetry. This was called a puppet haiku. Puppets do not sweat. A result of being led. Where is the respect? And then puppeteer haiku. Follow the leader while he pulls strings furiously. It's all for the show.
Oh, it is all for the
All
show,
right.
huh?
And here's my put on it, and one that's called Put on a Show. I don't think I've read it on the show. I should keep track of what I read on the show, but anyway. She was a master of puppets, and I was one of them. You can say she put her hand where it doesn't belong, but I liked it. She moved me. I was at her whim, ready to dance or stumble as a joke. I was the center of attention, but she was in control. Why did I agree to be at her beck and call? Because sometimes in life it's good to be led by strings with no thoughts at all. When a strong woman casts a spell and leaves you hollow inside, a shell of your former self, you've got no choice but to put on a show.
Put on that show.
That's dedicated to you.
Oh, thanks, Pete. That reminds me of...
I don't often have... I try to pick poems that go along with what I think might fit
That's cool.
with the poets.
Yeah, puppets are a nice way to reach a larger audience. Same
Right.
with the postcards,
Right.
the shows in general. That reminds me, your poem, though, reminds me of a romantic line about, only with you do I win by giving in.
There we go. Where's that from?
I learned the hard way. It's one of my poems.
Oh, it's
All my
yours?
poems the
Right.
same. All my poems kind of the same, yeah.
So It's funny because you do so many different things. What's your favorite thing to do? I mean, is it poetry? Is that a dumb question?
Well, they'll be like, and that's blurbing it out
Okay.
there. No, I've got the 3 Ps, you know.
Yeah.
Can you guess them?
3 Ps?
Yeah, the 3 Ps of life.
Well, we already have poetry and puppetry in there.
Well, puppetry's not one of them, but
Okay.
it's close. Poetry. You'll never guess, I'll tell you.
You know, okay. Oh, no, but I mean your art.
Poetry, pot, and I can't say the third one.
Oh, okay, yeah, I know what you right.
Do
well,
you?
Yeah, yes.
You know?
Well, the way you waved your fingers is it's a good way to start.
I'm not sure what order they go in. Oh, yeah.
But no, the show's going in a different direction. No, I mean your art, not like other things. I like to puff. I like to write poetry after I puff.
I like to, yeah, me too.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's hard to do.
Do you smoke before you read?
I used to not, but anymore I don't care. I remember one time I was going to read this guy Roger Richards. He was at Strand Bookstore, and he gave me reading at the Vanguard, like when I'd only been in town for a year, with Ed Sanders and Allen Ginsberg and
Wow.
Ted Berrigan.
Uh-huh.
So, yeah, I know. So I was so lucky. People fell right in there. So he had me reading over his bookstore. And we're going over there. I'm thinking no big deal. And my friends, we stopped in Washington Square. Everybody's laid back, took a couple hits, took one too many probably.
Right.
Get to the bookstore, and I've written this strange prose piece about some effete dude staying at the Wentworth Hotel. It was John Wiener's influence, actually. But I get there, and they said, "Are you going to read with Gerard Malanga?" And I was like, "Oh my God, he's going to be offended by this poem." For some reason, I was like, and I was so scared. When I was, and I didn't smoke pot for years before reading, decades, man.
Right. Oh, okay. Right.
Yeah, but it was just another example of falling in. I mean, to be reading with Gerard after only being here for a year was amazing.
Must have been a big deal.
It was amazing, yeah. I like Gerard. He was actually the first 2 readings I went to were at 10 Palace on the corner of Bowery and I think 2nd Street. Paul Pines might have been running it. And Janine Palmy Vega was one of maybe I think the second one, but I think the first one was Gerard Malanga. And he wasn't even reading poems. He was showing movies. Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I got to meet him.
So you told me when we talked at the cafe that you're disciplined and you sit down and you say, "I'm going to write." Is that true? Did I get that correct? Like, for me, I just I get an idea and I actually wrote my book and my soon to be hopefully published this year second book on my phone. It's in my pocket. I get an idea and I do it. Yeah. And because my handwriting sucks, I can't even read my own handwriting.
Yeah.
So journals don't work for me. Is that true? Do you say? Well, you did with is it Brevitas? You have to.
Yes.
You do Brevitas. Tell people about that.
I belong to this wonderful group.
Amy's been on. Amy Brown does that. She's
Amy
been
Brown,
on. Right. But,
Ron Colm.
Yeah.
A lot of people.
Right.
Sparrow. Mm-hmm. And Bob Holman. They every 2 weeks we send each other. Everybody gets this mailing, and everybody who wants to sends in a poem. So for myself, this 2-week deadline, because it on average takes about 3 days to really get it, and even then I'll tinker with it a hair.
Right.
So
it's how many syllables?
It has to be less than 14 lines. 14 lines or less.
Oh, 14 lines. Okay.
So mine are all sonnets, and in the summertime, sometimes I do haiku. It's a tradition for me to break it.
Right.
I like the form of the sonnet, because everything when I was coming up, it was suddenly anything goes.
Right.
And it was just too much to it.
So you
I really
the form.
admire poems that don't do what I do. Sometimes I feel like I'm just boxed in here, but it does give me the frame that I personally need.
Right.
Hey.
Was that you knocking?
Yeah. Hello.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody was knocking.
One of my
the one that come in.
What?
Yeah. So for that, you have to be disciplined. But generally speaking, all the stuff that you've written over the years, do you say, "I'm gonna write today, I'm going to write in the morning, I'm going whatever, whenever's comfortable
No,
for you.
it's a constant thing. It's like I'm searching for, it's like I have a poem called Scavenger Hunt, right? Okay. A lot of my poems start with an image. I really believe in the image and the persona and the lyricism are my 3 props personally, right? Uh-huh. And then you try to, hit the jackpot.
Is the image part because you're I mean, if you're kind of visual, you do visual art.
Yeah,
and,
perhaps.
Right.
But
music,
I just feel
is there any music in
there's
your...
total, Alice Notley said that was the linchpin of my work, was the musicality of it.
Okay.
She said that once. But yeah, so it's image, persona, lyricism. It's just, I feel like if you don't see something in the poem, it's kind of like, but I wanted to see something. I want something that I could put myself there. So a lot of times I'm really looking and searching for these images that I see that suddenly, especially if it's something kind of everyday-ish. And if you could, like I had this line about October's dry stalks rattle, the evening's prattle, or something like that. But I really heard the dry stalks, and then oh, boom, and then I'm off and running.
Right.
Then I might be able to actually improvise a couple of lines, which may be the best part of the poem.
Right.
And then I start like trying to figure out how does it fit together. My teacher at Brooklyn College before Allen, he said, he said, Jeff, you're trying to write a poem like you pick up the weights and you lift them up. You don't do this. That's what people do. He said, you lift them up, you put them down, you get a new set of weights. It's like every line. Sometimes every line is like this book, Triple Crown. They're all sonnets. But I had these ideas to name them all.
Did you design the book?
I helped design the book, yeah.
Right. I like the way that looks.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
So, and every poem, as you'll see, has it made in somewhere.
Right.
I got these ideas all at once, and I wrote five of them, and then I thought, well, I'll just make up a few rules. And this was a great idea to make a big project.
Right. So these are made in places?
Yeah.
What does that mean? You were there?
No.
Or you visualized being there? Or
Not
no?
even. I don't know. I just made up the title, and sometimes the title affects it a little bit. But it was just fun. Made in Terre Haute, made in Flint. I decided to make one for every continent at least, you know. Made in Cucamonga, made in Ithaca. And so at the end, I have a lot of notes about what this means. Like here's made in Java, and then Java means Indonesia programming language, slang for coffee.
Yeah. I got to ask, you have 2 kids?
Yeah.
Have either of them gone into the arts?
No.
Okay.
Their mother was very good at math, and they ran towards technical fields. They're both engineers.
Right.
And, but I'll say this, they're both extremely talented linguists.
Okay.
Their language, the way they talk, and their humor has been wonderful, yeah.
Right.
They're talented.
Cool.
Slang and fun expressions, bon mots.
Right. So they had to pick something up from Dad.
Right.
They got the math thing from Mom. And they did get the language.
They did, indeed.
All right, cool. Was family life or being a parent, did that ever make its way into your writing?
A little bit.
Yeah.
I was reading with Jim Berger at Nada Gordon last night, actually, and Jim was saying, my sister never made it into my poems. I've realized I don't write about my family. I don't often. Sometimes they do. I've been trying to stick my friends in there, their actions and all, too.
Right.
You know, I try. So that's something I'm looking for in the scavenger hunt. Like recently, the poem that goes, a black Russian is holding Ron hostage. So this is about Ron Colm at the Bowery Poetry Club. He says this line. I'm like,
Black Russian as a drink?
Yeah.
I love Black Russians. You know?
Oh, yeah, I'll take one right now.
Yeah. There was a Black Russian reference in a poem I wrote, too.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it seems political.
It's called Poetic While High. Anyway, so how about we read, not we, how about you
Let me
read
say one more
someone's?
thing about
Sure, of course.
the process. About
okay, yeah.
Lewis Warsh one time. I said, Lewis, do you use your notebooks a lot? He said, oh, yeah, absolutely. He said, I cobble the poems together. And I thought that was another great way. 'Cause that's what I said. It takes 3 days to work it.
So his poems are almost like a collage of ideas?
Yeah, from his notebooks and stuff.
Oh,
yeah.
and you, by the way, collage, you still do that?
Yeah, I do collage. I started doing collage when I first got here for birthday cards. And I just kept doing them, and I still do them for the birthday cards.
Right.
People, again, people give you stuff. Once you start doing a little art,
Right.
my brothers all were giving me markers and woodcut stuff and that kind of stuff.
So then keeps you going, right? You got the tools.
Yeah, man. Did I say politics? Let's try this one. Leaves of glass. It says an epigraph also, Walt Whitman. I give the sign of democracy. You brought red cherries. We shared a muffin at Union Square till a shower drove us into a doorway. I saved some thunder for later. The sky is no poorer for all its endless gifts. Hanging on to every word, let me call you, sweetheart. Let me keep you company in the long shadows we've come to box up. A phoenix in every pot. My mind is a fire, rummaging through the ashes of old adages, looking for good badinage to rally the masses. Time to take ukulele lessons, citizen activists. Time to make brass knuckles out of memes. More Moet, my sundrop on a golden chain. I could live forever on what your glass leaves.
Okay.
Bing.
Yeah. Does political climate, or does that like have an effect on you in your writing?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Like when the Ukraine thing started, I was consciously like looking for stuff that people would like to see in a poem, And I thought, well, you live in New York. Why don't you stick the damn Empire State Building in your poem?
Right.
So I found myself like with the word spire and empire, but I found myself as a light, something with a lightsaber out for hire.
Right.
I wanted to be a jet pilot fighting against, the invasion by Russia there.
Right.
So yeah, stuff like I'm not real overt. Like I have the witch doctors in Wichita. Oh, the Wichita doctors? The Wichita doctors are restless. Sorry, the Wichita doctors are restless. That's a direct reference to the abortion bombing in Wichita, but you wouldn't necessarily notice it. But it's like a
What do you mean abortion bombing?
machine. Well, one of the first abortion clinic bombings was in Wichita.
Oh, okay, right.
And so with all these laws,
Right.
against women and freedom, the Wichita doctors are restless.
Wow.
So it's like a couple of like cliches meshed together, but with this political underpinning. And then after a while, the black robes are spinning something. I think it was like reference to the tornadoes,
Sure.
but also the Supreme Court.
Right. Okay. Wow. That's great.
The Supreme Court stop.
Right.
The Supremes stop in the name of love. I have a little more.
I tend to I like to reference social issues more than political ones, I guess. And
It's hard.
yeah, but if I do it, I don't want to do it where it just doesn't, where it seems forced.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I'm saying? Like, oh, I want to make a statement, and it's, if I'm not really nailing it, then I don't want to. Do you throw away poems? Like, you start a poem and go, nah.
Well, looking back, there was a time when I wrote day and night, and all my friends did, and we wrote every time we got together, taking turns on the typewriter.
Really? So you with people and writing at the same time?
Yeah, sometimes,
okay.
yeah.
Right.
But now it's sort of like, I'll just tinker with it till I get it to where I want it. Occasionally, looking back, I may not like it. It may not make, but what's funny about that is, like, I had a poem recently, I kind of threw it into the selection process. I submitted it. There were several. They did not take my favorite one, Hanging Loose Press. I'm so happy to be in Hanging Loose magazine. But I respected the poem even more after they took it.
Right.
So, yeah, I once I put a lot of work into them. And they just, once you come up with a good title, too, it's like, man, what the hell,
Right. So once the title makes it official?
It can, yeah.
Right.
And also, I feel like for me...
Do you ever start with a title?
Yeah, sure.
Yeah.
Often. But yeah, I don't want to throw it away once I put it in there. I'll just make it work somehow. I keep changing. I go through every line, and once I'm happy with every line, then it's done, ready to go.
Right.
Or almost perfectly happy. But Elaine Equi taught me a lesson about titles. I thought of titles more like, I used to teach this. Okay, here's your title. What's your racehorse's name? Or what's your yacht's name? It didn't have to do anything with the poem. It's not the way most people do it.
Right.
But Elaine Equi, I realized you could make that title really fit a little better. Come on, let's go. So I started making my titles. If they come later, they might work better. And titles are something that, because I use puns and stuff like that, like the Wichita Doctors Are Restless, they might come first, they might come last. some of my lines are like, I have a line, the newest poem, I'll read that, called Iron Knee. So it's kind of like I capitalize irony, like it could be like a Native American name, you know, like Chief Iron
Sure.
Knee, but it's really irony.
Wow.
And so it's just,
Wow.
you
Right,
know,
right,
so
right.
I have a lot of that kind of stuff. So Iron Knee was going to be the title of the new poem,
Uh-huh.
but then I thought Hitch actually explains the poem. So
How
goes
so?
with- this poem is about people around me getting, you know, we're going to lose them.
Oh.
Not so much about I'm
Right.
going to lose me.
Right.
It's about the people around me
Uh-huh.
that I'm going to lose. You know?
Right.
So it's called Hitch because it has so many different meanings. Like, yes, you can love somebody, but the hitch is you're going to pay for that, but it's worth it. You know.
Right.
But it is a hitch, but you are hitched.
So we're getting, you know, still got some time to go, but let's.
Let me read this
Yeah, I
poem.
was gonna say, yeah. Read the poem.
Hitch. So this is my newest poem.
Newest as in like.
I just wrote it because of Brevitas is due today.
I see. All right. So that
So I
is
spent
very
like
new.
about 3 days
Right.
working on this, changing a line. And here,
Okay.
I'll like do things like lie in the tub and just go over one line. And
Right.
I need to change 2 words, something like that. But then I get it more or less down. This one, I was looking for images. I was scavenging hunt for images. And the first image and the last image were things I saw that I wanted to put in a poem.
Mm-hmm.
And then they kind of work together. But most of the rest of it is either just getting going or following through. Let me read it here, guy.
Yeah.
Hitch. You came to me, twigs on the ground after a storm. You came to me, a meteor on your shoulder. I found you churning, a tugboat towing a river, square zero. Make use of me, said the dummy. Amorous murmurs led us to being counted on, hugging the shore, ice on the deck, iron knee. Meet me at the bend. You came to me as a code that desired to be an ode. You will leave through a door made of tears, opening on evening's court, night's ravenous ink unleashed from the east, swallowing the clock. Trust sorrow's long tail curling up by your bed, waiting for your heart's ship to unmoor. A star or two is out now, secret keyholes from you. By the river, a high-rise hands the sky a black plume.
Yeah.
Romantic?
Yeah.
The
Very
black
much.
plume.
Yeah.
Eh.
So there's an anthology, right? Brevitas.
Mm-hmm.
How many are there?
They have one every year, so there must
Right.
be, I mean, I don't know when they started doing it. There must be at least 10 or 12, yeah.
How many have you been in?
All of them since they started doing it.
Oh, you started from the beginning?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Esther Smith invited me to join. No, I was on in the beginning. I came
okay.
in about halfway through,
All
or
right.
in the middle somewhere.
Okay.
I was so appreciative of it because it just, if you want to send in a poem, but yeah, I wanted that challenge.
Right.
It's good for me. I need that deadline.
Right.
Because some poets, they sit down, like one poet had a line about, "And should I make the soup or should I sit down and write the poem?" And I'm like, well, gee, that's easy for me. I'm going to make the soup, you know.
Yeah.
Maybe I'll write about the soup.
Right.
And I'm not going to sit there all day. So that's what the scavenger hunt thing is. Like the first image there, the last image that I remember right off, the first one was about the twigs after the storm. And I thought, and that's an image I could use.
Sure.
The last one, I'm looking across the East River and I see these new towers, you know, like 40 stories and stuff. And like 3 of them are sending a little smoke up.
Right.
I thought I'd like to use that. So the plume became for me kind of like, it is smoke, it's a pen, but it's also like a feather, you know, in a jouster, you
Right.
know, a king's hat.
You sound like a curious person. Like you're really looking.
Really looking, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, to me,
It
that's
was actually inspiring me to think differently about how I write.
yeah. Well, thank you. Yeah.
And how you know, like I try to be open, but it sounds like you're really detailed in your
You
openings.
know, it's like I want to be the greatest person I can be. I want to live the fullest life,
Right.
and then I want to be a great poet. It's
Right.
like I want to do.
Well,
the
they go
living.
hand in hand, I guess. Sort of.
Some people I think
Right.
they get the cart before the horse in
Right.
a way, you know. So you're just going through looking for stuff to put in there, and then you build up a lot of things, like you see the moon or your friends do something funny. So you have a whole repertoire of vocabulary ready to go, and then the poems you're reading by other people will give it, you know, some English, another kind of spin.
Right.
English.
So we should mention, how can people? Well, you have a website. What's the website?
Yes, my girlfriend Lori Ortiz has my website up. She also does a lot of the design. She designed Doppelgangster. She designs Live Mag, and the website is jeffreycypherswright.com.
Okay.
And you could just Google my name and that'll come up.
Right. And then you got a lot of videos up on YouTube.
I have a few, yeah.
Yeah, there's a few.
I have a few, right? About a dozen.
Yeah.
I have an album out.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yeah, one of my.
An album of you reading poetry, or
It's
you playing
mostly
music?
songs actually with my cousin and a couple of people.
I was going to ask you about the music, because I saw in the video that you're playing guitar. And
Yeah.
So how much do you ever perform out as
I
in
have.
music?
I have a couple of times.
And do you ever put music to your poetry?
Not too much.
Right. Because I work with a longtime friend who plays guitar, and I'll send him a poem, and he comes up with a guitar
I like to
lick for it.
jam. I love to make up songs. We used to in the gardens when we were there for 10 years. We had a party every month.
Yeah, I saw that.
And my friend said, John Bowman, the artist, he says, "Oh my God, you just made up a whole album."
Right.
And we would do that. We made up 12 songs. Some were covers.
Right.
But we made up 12 songs every damn party
Wow.
after a while.
Wow.
Yeah.
So anything? So this is being recorded on Wednesday, January 15th, but I'm not sure. Maybe this weekend it'll go up. It takes time to do it, so I'm not sure exactly when it's going to go up. But what's coming up for you that you would like to publicize? Are you featuring anywhere? Are you
Yeah,
doing
let me
anything
say a
specific?
couple of things. I'm going to be reading with the Wordshed and March 15th with Mike DeCapity and Martine Bellin, who I'm thrilled about.
Is that a nighttime thing?
That's Leah Elamaleus. I believe it's at 5 o'clock on a Sunday.
Oh, the 15th is March 15th.
Yeah, March.
That's a Saturday.
March something. I don't know.
Oh yeah.
Maybe it's actually it's the 16th. You're right. Very good. Wow, you know your calendar.
Well, I know it because yeah, I'll tell you why.
So
I'll tell you why
Live
later.
Mag is having its next issues coming out.
Cool. When's that?
And it'll be out. We're having a party at Tompkins Square Library on April 12th.
All right.
And a Saturday afternoon. And I was going to ask John Godfrey, and we were going to award him Lifetime Achievement. But John had he's in bad shape right now.
Oh, sorry to hear
So
that.
we're going to turn the whole thing into a tribute to John Godfrey.
Wow,
now,
okay.
Yeah.
Right.
And that'll be at the library. So those are the next two things I have coming up. Mine.
Right. Nice. All right. All right. Well, I'm going to play the theme song.
Yeah, man. I'll see you Tuesday.
Well, don't run away too quickly. Thank you, Jeffrey. You've been a great guest. You have so much to talk about. People can learn a lot about poetry and art and New York City by your being in your presence. I appreciate. You've been listening to Storytelling on Orchard Street, and I'm your host, Pete Salamita. Again, Jeffrey Cyphers Wright. Go to his website, check out his books. The books are available on your website?
I have a book here at P&T
Well, that's
Knitwear.
good. There we go.
Yeah, you can get them. Yeah, you can get them on the website. Some of the publishers have them. Spite and Dival, Mad Hat Press.
All right. Cool. Well, let's thank you once again, and look forward to more.
Check out the puppet
Poetry.
shows on
Yep.
YouTube.
Yep, definitely. All right. So again, thanks for listening, watching, or however you're partaking in this show, Storytelling on Orchard Street, and we'll see you at another time.
Wow. Another time.